Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for November 25th, 2022. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also present are Aaron McHale, Ralph Kohler, Ravi Shankar, and Simo Helston. So I'm looking now at the issue for today's meeting. It's 3322499, an unusual number of repeated digits. And one thing that came up in the Slack channel, we were asked to have a look at this issue. It's 1986330. When batch ID doesn't exist, Drupal should emit a 404. And this header, this beta phase evaluation indicates that this issue comes from when Drupal 8.0 was still being developed, so it's about 9.5 years old. And currently, if you try to go to /batch ID = 123, you get redirected to the home page with a message stating no active batch. So I set up a little test site so we can have a look at this. Let's see, this is a Umami demo profile, so it's multilingual. I wonder whether it's supposed to have a language code before the path batch. Yeah, as expected, we go back to the home page and there's an error message. And that seems to be the current behavior. And I guess people very rarely type batch = 123 into their browser window, but you might have a window open from a previously running process and try to reload that page. I think that's a more reasonable way to get there. And the proposed resolution is, instead of the home page with an error message, since the batch doesn't exist, Drupal should emit a 404, a page not found response, and display an error message to the user. And we have these two screenshots. The before shows the home tab with no active batch. I guess this is well, certainly not the Umami profile. It's probably Bartik. So here in Umami, we have the home tab and we have the error message. So that's equivalent. And the after would be a page not found response with the requested batch cannot be found. So let me just sort of see what the page not found response looks like, the 404 response in Umami. So here, the requested page could not be found. And instead of that message, we would use the one for the batch process. The requested batch could not be found. Oh, I'm sorry. So we would keep the text, the requested page could not be found. That's down here at the bottom of the screenshot. So we'd keep that. And then in addition to that, I guess, would be an error message with a little more information than the current error message. So first, any questions about what this issue is doing, what the proposed resolution is, how it shows up? Is this something everyone has run into at some point or another? No one is speaking up. As always, if it's easier for you to type rather than speak up, I'll keep an eye on the chat and read your comments into the record. Okay. So does anyone agree, disagree that a page not found response is better than going to the home page?
I think redirecting, like, why does it redirect to home page? So if that's like redirections are not always the best ideas, because also what I was thinking was that if there is error message batch not found, and then there is the page reads page not found, then it's kind of, is batch the same as page? So it's kind of page not found and batch not found. So it's kind of can you put like equals, or is it that neither of them can be found? Or it's kind of a little bit confusing to me, the messages.
Okay, so the standard text on the default 404 page is page not found.
Yeah.
Page could not be found. And then you don't like adding that to saying that a batch could not be found.
Yeah, because it's kind of, what if they would be patched, but then would the patch make it so that there would be a page? So it's kind of a little bit, because it's kind of a, maybe to phrase it a little bit differently, so that it kind of a little bit confusing that it's the same message, but one says batch and one says page.
Okay. Ralph, what did you want to say?
I agree with Simo. Having those two lines after each other is a bit confusing. And another detail I'm not sure about, and I wonder if it would make sense. In the error message, it says the requested batch, and in parentheses 20 could not be found, but what that 20 stands for isn't that clear. You can make an assumption that it is probably an ID, and as it is lined out above in the user interfaces changes, you see requested batch, curly braces, ID. It confirms that assumption, but why not make it more explicit and remove the parentheses and write something like the requested batch with the ID of 20 could not be found, or something like that, or a bit more shorter.
On the page not found, we'd keep the URL, whatever people type in. So the ID is there if anyone chooses to look at it. And I guess just note, it's when you go to a non-existent node, node/1234, we do not show the node ID here. I guess the difference is that for the batch, it's a query parameter rather than a page argument, but maybe for consistency, we shouldn't show the ID at all, or let's see, what was the URL? Yeah, it's batch ID equals 123. So Simo, what do you think about just keeping the existing error message and not changing that, but converting it to a 404 response? Do you think that would be less confusing than having page not found and batch not found?
Well, I think no active batch. It's also not very clear. I'm not actually sure how it's usually done with parameters that don't match. So it could say something like like a batch ID 20 does not render results or something like that, but it's, yeah, I'm not sure how to express that. So no active batch, kind of when there is attempted to give a batch number, so then we should refer in the error message to that number. So then it would be that something like batch number this and this is not active would be better than no active batch. So referring to the parameter.
I wonder, maybe we shouldn't redirect and maybe we shouldn't give a 404. Maybe we should just let people land on the page, batch with a query ID. And then on that page, give whatever message we agree on. Why should it be a 404 or a redirect? Why not just an ordinary page load with the 200?
Yeah, I agree with you, Vince, actually.
Say that again.
Yeah, I agree with you. This should be the default behavior, but because from where we are running the page, we should be on that same page. We don't need to redact this on home page or anywhere else. This doesn't make sense so much.
Okay, so you like that idea, and Ralph also gave a thumbs up to the idea. Aaron, Simo, do you have an opinion? Simo gives a thumbs up.
Generally, I'm okay with it. I still think it makes sense to at least return a 404 status code, because or some kind of non like other status code that's not 200, because that's just sort of, you know, best web practice. If something's not found, then 404 makes more sense, I guess. But that's just kind of a standards concern, less of the usability thing.
How does this compare to, let's say, a view with pager, and when you like add a page number that doesn't exist?
It's a good
So
point.
So let's look at admin content. Oh, by the way, I can share this link in the Zoom chat. This is a fresh install of the Umami demo profile on Drupal 10.1 dev. And the login is admin. So let's see, I guess usual pager is just page equals. Let me see if I have it right, and this should give the same result. Yes, so page is the correct query parameter. And if I say page 2, I just get no content available. It does not look like a 404 response.
Yeah, maybe like, now that I think about it, maybe because it's a query parameter, maybe returning a 404 is not technically correct. I would be interested to look at the what the specification says about when you're supposed to.
Yeah, I think it does make a difference whether it's a query parameter or an argument. But as you say, we should look up the standards. But yeah, I'm sort of leaning towards giving an ordinary page response with some sort of message. You know, if the pager is out of bounds, we say no content available. Yeah, the batch is a little different because we're not paging, we're not doing a range, we're identifying a particular batch. Ralph gives us a Stack Overflow reference. Stack Overflow, I guess it's questions /516-76598. Maybe if you are listening to the recording and type that much in, you'll get to the correct page. HTTP 404 versus 400 for invalid query parameters. So the question is, here's my request URL. It's something with user ID equals 9999. Note that user ID is a query parameter, not embedded with parameter. I understand that if the request URL is blah, blah, blah with 9999 as part of the page arguments, and ID does not exist in the database, the code 404 should be used, but what HTTP status should be used for the case the user ID is a query? So this is exactly the question we're asking. And the answer here is I would use 404 not found. And the RFC just defines a 400 response as a 400 bad request status code indicates that the server cannot or will not process the request due to something that is perceived to be a client error, e.g. malformed request syntax, invalid request message framing, or deceptive request routing. Since your request is valid and you are just trying to access a resource that does not exist, I think a 404 not found status is more suitable. The same RFC 7231 defines its meaning like this. The 404 not found status code indicates that the origin server did not find a current representation for the target resource or is not willing to disclose that one exists. So I guess that RFC is not making a distinction between query parameters and page arguments.
Yeah, I'm looking on the developer.mozilla.org and I'm seeing something broadly similar in that sense that like, you know, it's yeah, broadly saying the same thing. For a 404, it says the server cannot find the requested resource in the browser. This means the URL is not recognized in an API. This can also mean the endpoint is valid, but the resource itself does not exist. Servers may also send this response instead of a 403 forbidden to hide the existence of a resource from an unauthorized client. This response code is probably the most well-known due to its frequent occurrence on the web. 400 just being the server cannot or will not process the request, which, yeah, same one that you just read. So I guess 404 is still technically appropriate.
Yeah, I guess so. If the standards don't make a distinction between the path and the query string, you know, those are two parts of the URL. If they just refer to the URL not being available, then I guess 404 is correct.
And on the same page for 200 OK, it says the request succeeded. The result meaning of success depends on the HTTP method, and it gives various ones, but in this case it would be get. The resource has been fetched and transmitted in the message body. So in this case, that didn't happen. Therefore, 200 is not an appropriate code.
Okay. Then I wonder if we should have a follow-up issue to give a 404 response when the pager is out of bounds.
Yeah, probably actually.
All right, so does anyone still think that 404 is inappropriate? Until we looked at the document, the standards, until we looked at the standards, we almost had consensus that that it should be a 200 response. But okay, no one is still voting for a 200 response. So we'll go with that. And the only question then is the text. And the current text is no active batch. I think oh yes, here it is, no active batch. And the proposed text in the issue is the requested batch 20 could not be found. And I guess Simo's first comment was that page not found and batch not found are confusing, and perhaps we can reword that and be more explicit about the fact that 20 in parentheses here represents a batch ID. So perhaps there is no batch with ID 20. I'll put that in the chat as a proposal. Is that an improvement? Do you have other suggestions?
Yeah, that's at least much better.
Okay.
And would you still display the requested page could not be found afterwards, or just there is no batch with ID 20?
I'm pretty sure you display both, because I think that the requested page could not be found is the standard 404 response.
Okay.
Or I should say the default 404 response. That can be overridden.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's just something I'm used to, but I'm kind of used to messages of this and that does not exist instead of there is no. But that's maybe something that I'm just used to. That is not so nice wording.
So that would be something like the batch with ID 20 does not exist, something like that, which is a little bit longer. I'm just looking at the page here. This is admin configuration system, basic site settings, and just in case anyone here or listening to the recording doesn't know about it, you can choose any page on your site as the page to show with a 404 response. So you can change the behavior pretty easily through the admin UI, but the default is this with the message, the requested page could not be found. And this points out a pretty common failing that people often forget to theme their 404 pages, and even the people doing the Umami profile forgot to do that. If, at least in my opinion, there should be a little more padding here between the message page could not be found and then the start of the footer. Ooh, Ralph has a slightly shorter message. No batch with ID 20 exists. And that's a little bit shorter than my initial suggestion. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about, and apologies if this was covered earlier, I was beavering away in the background trying to copy over the list of issues. So now that that's on the issue for this meeting, I'm just thinking about like the target audience here. That like there's two situations that two types of people broadly that are probably going to come across this. People who are coming across this page because they've been performing an administrative action, like doing a bulk update on something. And that's the most common because that's like by default what Drupal, when this is usually exposed is you're doing a bulk update. So like that's probably fine, and it's probably going to be in the context of the admin UI, and you've probably hit the back button or something, you know. But there's another situation where on maybe on like a site that's doing something custom, it maybe has like a custom members area, and like you can log in and there's something that'll use the batch API as and you can, you know, you're doing something as a regular user. There's a, in those cases, there's a chance like a regular user could come across this page, if the site was providing some kind of functionality to do that. Now, I'm not sure if we necessarily have to think too deeply into that edge case, because that is probably an edge case that core probably, you know, you should probably deal with that in the context of your own site. But I guess it's something to be aware of. It's like, is this, if you were a regular user, like, is this messaging helpful to you? If you're not like, you know, an admin of the site or something like that.
Okay, so the current message is short and opaque, not very informative. And I think you're right. In context, any of these messages is a little bit confusing because people don't connect batches with whatever they did to get here. Can we sort of recreate this? Going back to admin content, can I do a bulk operation? I don't want to delete everything. We have an issue. Delete content should not be the first on this menu. Let's promote everything to the first page, or to the front page rather. And then, let's see, Aaron suggested we use the back button. Does that do it? No. I guess maybe my batch size is too large and I didn't trigger the batch API. All right, so it's a little hard to reproduce this.
I think it definitely does if you're deleting a user, or at least I think it does, because the delete process, I think it batches it for all the stuff that potentially, like if you went into people and deleted a user that has some content and you selected to, like, you know, one of the operations is unpublish or delete, I think in that case I think it always uses the batch process. I could be totally wrong on that one.
So let's create a test user, and you say that deleting a user. Oh, I have lots of users on the demo profile.
Yeah, I think just like the regular delete, if you go into the user and then yeah, there you go.
Batch. And then if I use the batch, oh, interesting. An AJAX error occurred. Oh, and then if I go to the error page, then I get the redirection. So the error page is the page I'm on. En batch ID equals 4. Oh, but it's op equals finished rather than op equals start. And there I get redirected. All right, so I've been doing some process and I click the back button. So maybe it should be sort of a longer error message explaining how you got here, or maybe that maybe that should be part of the page text rather than the error message. Although the usual, where did I have it? The usual 404 message doesn't have, I wonder how hard it is. I guess we don't have to worry about implementation at a usability meeting. But maybe there should be some tailored information about likely ways you got here. Like you reloaded a page or you used the back button and this page is no longer valid. I mean, normally you don't end up on these pages. On the other hand, maybe we shouldn't let the enemy be, let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Maybe we should just go for an improvement and agree that this 9-year-old issue is an improvement, that the important thing is to give the proper response of 404 rather than a redirect. Decide that's good enough for now. Go ahead, Ralph.
The only thing I think that would make sense, instead of assuming what could have led to that error and led the person to the particular page and that error, it might be perhaps helpful to provide some follow-up action, what to actually do about that not found requested batch. Because that is perhaps something, at least for the non-technical folk who might be by accident ran into that issue, might be lost what they should do in that situation.
Yeah, it's hard though to think of anything that any advice that we can give.
Maybe at least some reassurance, because perhaps if I read, and perhaps I have no idea at all about the technical backgrounds, and I read the requested batch 20 could not be found, and I think, oh my God, something got deleted perhaps per accident, or should I try to undo the deletion somehow, or where should I go, or does it might cause some harm on follow-up problems in the future, or could I just ignore it? Because it's an error, so it is noticeable and maybe important, so I have no idea basically what the implications are.
It's making it a bit more vague and a bit guesswork, but if the error message would be something like the batch number this and that does not exist or has already completed processing or something like that, so it could kind of slightly hint in a way that this might be something that's already been done, that was already done.
Yeah, but we don't know the details of how we got here. You know, someone might have typed something random into the address bar, as I've been doing, or someone might have used the back button, or there might have been an error during the batch processing. I think that sometimes leads to it. Is this a new link, Aaron?
Yeah, I actually find a potentially more appropriate status code. Something that was previously available that no longer is available.
Okay, so Aaron is suggesting the 410 response. Developer.mozilla.org, en-us, docs, web, HTTP, status 410. HTTP 410 gone client error response code indicates that access to the target resource is no longer available at the origin server and that this condition is likely to be permanent. If you don't know whether this condition is temporary or permanent, a 404 status code should be used instead. So, oh, look, and the sidebar shows all the 4XX error codes. Length required, precondition failed, payload too large, URI too long.
There is also an effectively like an out of range one, which also could be a good one for the pagers.
Okay, so somewhere in here.
Yeah, it's a 416 range not satisfiable. But I think this has more, maybe that's a good one because I think it has like more technical things about like a range header, and I don't know if we actually do that with the pager, but that's completely unrelated to the issue we're looking at in any case. So
Okay. So I have a couple of objections to this. One is that it's unfamiliar. You know, people don't know what 410 means. Another is that Drupal doesn't have a default 410 page. It has a default 404 page. And the last objection is that we don't know easily whether it's accurate or not. I mean, many of the common ways of getting here, using the back button or so forth, it would be appropriate. But again, someone can type something random into the address bars I've been doing, and then it might be something that was never found, and might be in the future. So I have a lot of problems with the 410 response. If we do additional work, we could figure out whether the current batch ID is larger or smaller than the previous ones. But I'm not sure that we want to work that hard, and I'm a little bit afraid that that would be information disclosure. Go ahead, Aaron.
yeah, that's a great point. The only thing I would say is on the first couple of points you raised, those might be advantages because the fact Drupal doesn't have a default page means we are potentially could have a better, more specific response page. But yeah, I think the last point you raised is a good one that actually, we don't necessarily know if it has previously existed. So yeah, maybe back to 404, I think.
Anyone else have comments to make on the 410 response?
I just get excited when I see a code that I think we could use because I'm always like, oh, we always use 404, 403. Like, come on, there's loads of other ones. I was like, oh, is this one we can actually use?
Yeah, I think because we don't know, so 404.
Okay, so we'll go with 404. So I would suggest, in the interests of making progress and not tying up this issue for another 9.5 years, that we perhaps suggest some improved error text, and then suggest a follow-up issue to give a more actionable message. And we've spent a little bit of thought now without coming up with any really good suggestions. So Ralph gives a thumbs up to my idea, and let anyone who wants to work on the follow-up issue and come up with a further improvement. But at least we'll have the response code right, and perhaps a little more information in the error message. We don't have to worry about information disclosure because you know, the batch ID is already in the URL, where we're not telling them anything more than they can piece together from the response code and the URL they've requested. So I guess then we have a few suggestions for the text in the Zoom chat. There is no batch ID. I'm sorry, there is no batch with ID 20. The batch with ID 20 does not exist, and no batch with ID 20 exists. Any other suggestions? Any comments on those three proposals?
Yeah, I like the second one you posted there, Benji. The batch with ID 20 does not exist.
Okay, even though that's a little bit longer than the other two.
Yeah, something I think it was Sima said earlier, like there's something about the familiar. It's more familiar. I can't speak today. Yeah, it just feels like a more familiar kind of way of phrasing it, I guess.
Okay, if it's consistent with other error messages we have, that would be an advantage. Shall we take a vote? Just go through them one at a time. And I guess I like the idea of approval voting. You're allowed to vote for more than one. So who likes there is no batch with ID 20? Who likes the batch with ID 20 does not exist? Get a thumbs up, 3 thumbs up from Aaron, Ralph, and Simo. And who likes the shortest one? No batch with ID 20 exists. I still see 3 thumbs up. Is that left over, or do you also approve of this one?
I'm happy with both, or happy with either of them.
Okay. So either the second or third. Okay, well, let's post those as options to the issue and let the people who've been working on the issue choose, and also suggest a follow-up issue to give some more actionable method. Okay, and Ralph and Aaron confirm in the chat that they approve of both. And any volunteers for posting a comment to the issue? I'm happy to do it since I have some time off this week. Okay, let me just before I forget, let me copy these to somewhere more permanent. Okay. So moving on, I think, Aaron, you said you were copying over the list of open issues to this. Thank you for doing that.
Yep. I also included the meta issue for blocks because I think we agreed we wanted to keep on top of that one and try to, because I think there's some work that one's currently like blocked on the fact that the first issue is RTBC. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to, you know, try and push that a lot, like get that over the line committed. Is there any tags that are still waiting to be, you know, I know there was like, were we still waiting on product manager review or?
Yeah, so when we think we have enough positive comments on the issues, we should, not just have the tag, but also ping the product managers. So I think are Webchick and Gabor Hotzi and Roy Schulten, Roy. So if we think we're at that point, then I'm certainly happy to go ahead and bring it to their attention. I would still like to see more activity and people bringing it to their local meetups and posting comments. And I plan to do that myself in a couple of weeks. Ralph, go ahead.
Yep, I agree to go on maybe for 1 or 2 more weeks, getting in opinions and point of views, but so far it's all positive. So I suppose getting the attention of project managers could be useful, but one detail we might discuss in a future meeting here is the 2 points that came up in the last 2 discussions I had, with the ideas for adding an overview page of the available blocks for the custom content library to extend it in its functionality, as well as the same functionality for layouts. That is something both meetups I've presented considered helpful and even necessary, maybe, to be in control what kind of blocks are available and what kind of layouts. So that it is maybe something we might explore that could spin out follow-up issues for each of the ones I've made a comment in.
Talk about that now, or would you like a little time to organize some thoughts to bring up maybe next week, or
yeah, we could do it next week maybe. And I'm not really prepared. I've only written up the comments and the conclusions from the meetups in the issues. I could link the issues that anyone could take a look until next week, or I posted in the issue for next week's the direct links to the comments, so it's accessible to anyone.
Okay, so let's plan to do that next week. And just looking through this list of issues, I noticed placement of batch progress messages, and I kind of like to take a look at that one just because it's in the same system as what we've been looking at earlier in this meeting. Shall we do that, or does someone have another choice?
I think that sounds good. I have something just real. Well, we actually have like 9 minutes left, but I just want to draw attention to it in Slack. Actually, a few days ago, I linked to an issue that I found off of the back of last week's meeting. Obviously, maybe we'll bring it up next week, because yeah, it'd be good to, as you said, stick on the same theme, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, if I tagged like yourself, Benji, and Ralph and Thomas from previous week's meeting, so if anyone's got any time just after the meeting to go back and look at that message from Wednesday in Slack.
Okay. So yes, we are getting close to the end of the hour, but let's at least have a quick look at 2569785, placement of batch progress messages. When running an upgrade through the UI/upgrade, progress messages are displayed above the progress bar rather than below it. 20 messages are displayed before scrolling off the screen. I had thought this was an intentional D8 change, but apparently not. They should be below. We're not doing anything to try to achieve this, so we need to figure out why it's happening. Mike Ryan states in number 4, the positive side of having 20 messages on screen. I think the context is helpful, otherwise most migration results will disappear before it's possible to see them. I did include this to get feedback, so there's a -- so far. The first step is to decide if the upgrade screens stay as is or be changed, and if changed, then decide what needs to be done. So this isn't a generic batch process. This is specifically a migration through the admin UI. Well, that's an interesting screenshot of the dev tools or the page source. Div class equals progress underscore label, class equals progress track. I'm not sure what to make of that. What does this link show us? The elements. Here we go. This is, I think, a more helpful. And maybe even those screenshots were mislabeled. Maybe they got it backwards. So this screenshot makes it clearer. The messages are above the progress bar, which I think is what the issue summary stated. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ah. That 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 does 12, 14, 16, 18. Oh, it looks to me like 21, not 20, but maybe it was counted. Yeah. Okay, now I'm pretty sure that these two screenshots were put in the wrong order. Proposed resolution to be determined. Okay. And Aaron, about a month ago, you're the one who suggested that we talk about it.
Ah, this is my fault. I genuinely don't. Do you know when you go like write so many comments on different issues? I genuinely don't remember seeing this issue, but I clearly did at one point in time. So what must have brought it to my attention?
Okay. Oh, and here are the screenshots in line. Here are screenshots, the issue summary is updated. The current task is to answer the questions in the issue summary problem motivation section. So they're looking for some guidance from us, some suggestions on which way forward. And
I definitely feel like moving the progress, like having the progress bar, I don't know, below the messages does feel weird.
okay, so if that is the main question, then this screenshot is adequate. And certainly the progress bar doesn't take up much vertical space, so it's not hiding the important information very much. And how about the line currently upgrading comment type? Should that be above or below the progress bar?
I think that what it's currently doing should be close to the progress bar. So I'm wondering, does it add new lines to the top or to the bottom?
I believe to the bottom. Not sure, Ralph.
Yeah, that's also a question I would have had, where the new items are added. Because at the moment, you have several points of attention. Me if I see an upgrade process, I try to stay in control. I look for one, if it's still running, I look at, for example, the first line, currently upgrading comment type with those 41 of 80, 42 of 80, and so forth. And I also take a look at the visual queue underneath the progress bar, and then I see if another item is added. And that way, it is currently laid out. You have more or less a gap of 20 lines. You have to jump visually in between the top line and the bottom line. But it would be still the same if you would move the progress bar up to the currently upgrading comment types, then it would be in one place and visually less demanding. But then there's still the question where the new, like Simu asked, where the new items are added, at the bottom or at the top. If it would be at the top, it would be unexpected and unusual to add it on top, but it would be also in place. But if it's at the bottom with 20, it's still a huge visual gap to jump in between. So maybe an idea would be to limit the number of lines shown from 20 to 5 or 6 or 7, something like that, maybe.
I'm afraid we're almost at the hour. So feel free to look at this issue yourself. It seems it's not actually closely related to the issue we spent most of the hour on. And maybe I'll take a little time and put those screenshots into the issue summary so to make it a little easier to see what's going on. So we are out of time. Thank you for coming. Any final words?
Just to say, yeah, let's maybe we can start a thread in Slack, because I have some ideas based on how other systems do this kind of stuff. So yeah, that might be a good next step as well. So just open a Slack thread.
Sure. Thanks for that. And we'll do it again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice
Bye.
weekend.